This episode brought to you by Cafe Imports, Minneapolis-based importers of fine specialty green coffees. Independently owned and operated since 1993, Cafe Imports has been dedicated to decreasing its impact on the earth through renewable energy, carbon neutrality, and by supporting conservational efforts in places where quality coffee is grown and also where quality coffee is consumed. Where does your coffee come from?
And by the National Parks of Lake Superior Foundation. As a nonprofit, we rely on support from listeners like you. If you like what you hear, please consider a donation. To learn more and make a gift, visit us at www.gosuperior.org.
Welcome to the Lake Superior Podcast. I'm Walt Lindala.
And I'm Frida Waara. We are made stronger by story, and there's no better source than the continent's largest body of fresh water, Lake Superior.
So join us as we highlight the 5 national parks that ring this greatest of the Great Lakes, meet the people, tour the places, and learn about the projects that make these parks and body of water so remarkable.
This podcast made possible with the support of the National Parks of Lake Superior Foundation and Media Brew Communications.
I'm Walt Lindala.
And I'm Frida Waara.
Welcome once again to the Lake Superior Podcast. Frida, today we are joined by a fellow that I've actually talked to several times, and he's in the Marquette, Michigan community, and a lot of his work is focused there, but it goes beyond that. But we're going to talk about keeping areas of the big lake clean.
You know, when you look out at that big blue, it is so remarkable. And I'm on the beach every day pretty much, and I don't see any trash, at least along Lakewood Lane. You know what I do see often are earplugs, and I think those are from the folks on the oar boats. Then they are, foam rubber, and they float to the surface and show up on shore. But when I talk to Don, I realize what is below the surface, and that classic out of sight, out of mind. We really need to understand the work that he's been doing and basically what's underneath that surface.
Yes, joining us now on the podcast is Don Fassbender. He's president of Great Lakes Scuba Diving and Lake Preservation, also known as Diver Don. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Walt. And thank you, Frida, for having me.
Yeah, so let's get right into this. I mean, we'll talk a little bit more about what you specifically have been doing with helping with cleanup of areas along the lakeshore, but how did you get hooked on scuba diving? Tell us a little bit about how you got into this avocation.
Sure. Well, as a young man, I can recall racing home from school just so I wouldn't miss the undersea world of Jacques Cousteau, which would be playing, on Channel 3 or 13, whatever it was. And I've always been interested in sea creatures and scuba diving in general, so it was pretty easy for me to take up as a sport. It was very fascinating. It wasn't something a lot of people were doing, but very fascinating indeed.
Mm-hmm. And then that moved into something that you've been doing now for basically your life. And let's talk about that a little bit. What is that like when you get under the surface and start going down there? It's a whole different world, isn't it?
It is a whole different world. When you go scuba diving, it's almost like flying. You're very neutrally buoyant. You can swim along off the bottom and, visit areas that most people will never see.
And Don, you like to do it in also some vintage equipment. So I want to know a little bit about that, because I think about anytime you're underwater and you're allowing something else to help you breathe, I think I would want the latest, greatest, most checked out piece of equipment on the planet. But you really have an interest in the vintage stuff.
I do. I do have modern gear. If ever I'm helping the instructor at the university with students, I'll be wearing, modern equipment, regulators and push-button buoyancy control devices. But I do also enjoy the vintage equipment. Years ago, they didn't have these buoyancy devices. You relied upon proper weighting and your lung volume to keep in the water column without, descending too fast, without rising too fast. So it's a totally different experience. It's a little more involved because you have to really be in tune with your body and the water, of course, and your wading. So I just enjoy the freedom of it. There's less equipment. There's actually less things that can go wrong. A lot of the vintage equipment is very similar to the modern-day stuff. Physics hasn't changed. Just some of the equipment that they added on to this basic kit, these buoyancy compensators and so forth. A vintage kit would look like a tank, a regulator, some fins, maybe a wetsuit, and a mask, and then you're off. No computers, no fancy gauges.
Yeah.
Don, has this development in the fancy gauges and all of that, has it expanded the folks who are coming to the sport?
It certainly has made it easier, yeah. You can get certified in a very short period of time and be quite good at scuba diving, whereas in the past when you had kind of real basic gear, you kind of had to be a really good swimmer. So it's made the experience more accessible to a lot of people. And it's a great thing. My daughter started learning at a young age, younger than I was, only because of these modern advances. So I'm not knocking them. I just enjoy the vintage experience as well.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk a little bit about your diving. I mean, we're talking to you in the context of diving Lake Superior, but tell us a little bit about your diving history. Where have you been diving? What is some of your background?
Sure. Well, most of the diving I do is in the Great Lakes, and I really enjoy shipwreck diving, so you'll see me at the Straits. You'll see me in Lake Huron or Michigan, and, of course, Lake Superior. But in addition, I'll do anything underwater, it seems. I have a favorite place down in Bonne Terre, Missouri. There's a mine that flooded years ago when you can go and explore some mine equipment. In fact, there's a tractor and jackhammers and things that are left on site, and you can go swim and experience that. A lot of people like to dive in Florida. I've been to Florida, Mexico, the Caribbean, the Mediterranean. I've yet to go to the South Pacific. That's part of the ever-expanding bucket list that I'm composing. But most of my diving is done around here in the Great Lakes, and there's a good reason for it. There's some wonderful history here. There's a lot of neat shipwrecks you can explore, and it's super convenient. It's right there.
But, Don, it's really cold. I can't tell. I mean, I'm not telling a lie here, right?
No, you're not. And a lot of people, when they pick up the sport, they won't continue to dive here. They'll just go to those southern climes and enjoy the warmer water and the pretty fishes. But I dive year-round, and I enjoy it. You just have to be either used to the cold or invest in some nice thermal protection, some dry suits and things like this.
But you still don't have your face covered, do you? I mean, my goodness.
No.
That when we talk about sometimes when I'm skiing and that wind is coming at me, I can't even imagine what it's like to be, well, I guess it would be 33, 34 degree water. Otherwise it would freeze, right?
Right. It's extremely cold water. Your face becomes numb, but you're not under the water for all that long. I mean, if you get an hour worth of diving in the winter, you're ready to come up. Trust me, it is cold, and I do feel it.
Yeah.
But I enjoy it so much that I'm willing to, subject myself to these bitter temperatures.
So when you're diving around in your various places like this, you mentioned those other places you've been, some of maybe your bucket list spots to still go to. What have you found when you've been out there? I mean, I'm curious because I feel like this will evolve into what we're going to talk about here in a moment. But have you experienced some things, maybe treasures? I mean, what's out there?
Oh, we've pulled a lot of things out of the Great Lakes. Lake Superior, I've pulled out all kinds of bikes, and I'm always finding things like jewelry, mostly junk jewelry, but I did find some nicer jewelry that I still have. We'll be plucking phones and watches and even drones out of the lake in our efforts to not only clean up, but to return these things to their rightful owners. I have some videos online of a gentleman piloting a drone, and it was looking right at him. I've still yet to see him or get his drone back to him. Of course, he probably has a new one by now. So we're always finding things. There's a gentleman named Brandon, and over the Harborfest weekend a couple of years ago, he'd lost his bike. Seemed someone wanted to take it for a little joyride. So I found it about 2 days later and was able to return it to him over at the store there, Lakeshore Drive, Lakeshore Bike. It was a nice specialized bike, so I knew somebody wanted to get it back.
Mm-hmm.
So some of the finer things that I found, I found an NMU laptop at the Cove. Makes you wonder what was on that hard drive.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Someone wanted to wash that one.
We're talking with Don Fassbender today, president of Great Lakes Scuba Diving and Lake Preservation. Don, let's move a little bit into it. I mean, you've made a name for yourself as Diver Don, doing a lot of cleanup work. And what was the transition? What got you from a hobby diver into somebody that really seemed to pick up this mission of cleaning up junk originally out of Lake Superior in the Marquette area, but you've spread that around? Tell us the story there.
Sure. I've always been interested in cleaning up the Great Lakes. My daughter and I, some fellow divers, we'd have these little mesh bags with us, and we'd pick up the plastics in the cans and things as we dive. But the larger items, it always bugged me to see these tires and even refrigerators. In Marquette, there were refrigerators and other appliances that I would swim by, and it would really bother me. But I didn't think I would have the ability to remove that stuff without a lot of help. Mm-hmm. And so when I started posting some videos on YouTube and on Facebook, some folks would catch glimpses of me cleaning up and would offer to help. Little did they know what door they were opening. That Pandora's box is wide open now. We removed, 14 tons of tires out of Marquette Lower Harbor alone over a period of about 5 years. And there's still a lot of trash down there. In fact, you could probably take a dart and blindfold yourself, throw it at a map of Lake Superior, and come across some trash. It's everywhere. It kind of is.
14 tons of tires. I can't even imagine. First of all, tires that get filled with water and you try to go pick them up and they're heavy on land. How in the world, Don, how do you get those tires to the surface?
It's a slow process. There was a tire that was probably a 6-foot tractor tire off the wall at Matson-Lower Harbor Park that had been half buried in silt. And I remember putting 3 or 4 different dives just into that one alone. You'd have to go down, you'd have to move the silt around, and then all of a sudden you're blind. There's all this particulate in the water column. You can't see what you're doing. You have to come back to it another day and ultimately rope it, and then pull it up or use lift bags. It's not an easy undertaking, even truck or car tires. There's a lot of suction in there. So you kind of just have to slowly work it out. And, there's a lot of time spent underwater trying to remove this stuff.
Can you explain for our listeners that may not be exactly familiar? We're talking about Marquette, Michigan, which is on the south shore of Lake Superior. But why, when you say 14 tons of tires were pulled out of there, I'm sure that was cumulative over the years, but why are they there? What is it that has resulted in those tires being there?
Sure, that makes perfectly good. That's a good question. Tires were used as boat bumpers for years and years. Folks would tie them to the dock, and then, as the weather wears them down, maybe there's some ice that comes and tears the tire off the side of the dock in the winter. Well, there's no shortage of used tires, so they would just string another one up in its place. And, you can't blame these fishermen, and they're not scuba divers. They're just trying to protect their boat, the dock, and so forth. Over the period of, years, decades, things would, accumulate. And so when I put in as many hours as I have diving along the docks in Matson-Lower Harbor Park, I would find everywhere I looked, you couldn't swim along one of those docks, the fish dock, the association dock, the wall. There's always going to be tires. And, it gets to a point where it's like, this is something has to happen. And so I did reach out to the city, Parks and Rec, Harbor Master, a number of individuals to see if I couldn't get help cleaning up, the harbor. And I thought it would just stop there, but now we're getting calls from Escanaba and some, other areas. I've got a project, in fact, that I hope to continue working on up in the Portage. There's a big concrete wall where boats would tie up against, and we found some tires there. We found all kinds of things. The reason we were there was a tug that had sunk a few years ago, and there was a salvage company interested. They were commissioned to get rid of that tug. It had been continually leaking oil and gas, and so me and another local diver from the Lance area, Derek DeVito, we'd hooked up this tug to some chains, and we stuck around while they were pulling it out of the water, and we'd swim along, and look, more tires. This was probably the third area that we explored. There were some in Lance. We helped the KBIC, in fact, to do a tire removal system from their campground site. And there's a lot of tires there. I had to have been 50 of them. We didn't measure the weight, but there's quite a bit. So as you can only imagine, anywhere you go, there's going to be tires.
I want to ask you this, Don, though. You mentioned, of course, tires, and that explains it a lot because you're right, they were used for bumpers for decades upon decades and then just cut into the water, and under the surface it was gone and whatnot. But you mentioned some other things. You talked about like large appliances and bikes, of course, and things like that. I mean, how does this get in the water? How do you find a fridge in Lower Harbor off of Lake Superior in Marquette, Michigan?
Yeah, that one has a different story. It's not a pretty one. I mean, it's not like someone tied it to the dock to protect their boat. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, out of sight, out of mind, I believe Frida mentioned earlier, people will discard things in the lake. Now, those refrigerators, they were older. I don't see a lot of new trash being introduced to the lakes like that. I think our mindset has changed such. We're a little more conscientious. But we do find a lot of other things introduced that are more modern, plastic bags, cans, and so forth. But, someone had discarded them. They didn't want to either pay to have the refrigerant removed or pay to have it disposed of. Who knows? They found it easier to run it down in the harbor and throw it in the lake. And we have videos and photos on social media that shows us removing a lot of this stuff. You wouldn't believe some of the things we found in there. One of my favorite finds is a little diamond ring that was tied to a rock with a shoelace, for crying out loud. I mean, who would do such a thing? I put that on social media trying to find the story. I want to know why this was done, but nobody has come forward.
I think she might have said no. I'm not sure.
She might have said no.
Yeah. Don, I'm sitting here and I'm just imagining, let's just talk about cleanup in a vacant lot somewhere, how difficult that is. You've got to not only get this stuff out of wherever the silt and all that other is, how in the world do you get it to the surface, and how many people does it take?
Well, there was probably a couple of dozen dedicated divers who help us. We're all volunteers, and we take turns. I guess I'm in the water a fair amount, but it's not an easy process. These things are heavy. We sometimes have to use lift bags, and we'll kind of stage them in areas because, again, when you pull something out of the muck, your visibility is gone. So during the process of leading up to one of these cleanups, we'll, put a bunch of tires in one area, then we'll go to another area and stage things differently until we can collect them all during the quote-unquote cleanup date.
Yeah.
But, there's a lot of work involved in moving these things, and sometimes tires are pretty complete. You can just take the regulator out of your mouth and put the air inside of it, and it'll start to float, and you can swim with it. I've done that to the point where, oh gosh, I ran out of air. I should probably stop doing this and take a break for the end of the day. But more than once that I actually ran out of air in Lower Harbor. Kind of an embarrassing fact. Maybe you should cut that out.
No.
Oh
no,
yeah.
I'm going to leave that one.
Does that just give you a picture? I think I run out of steam. I'm like raking or whatever you're doing in the vacant lot or the forest, or we have a cleanup along the NTN trails, and we're basically picking up poop bags, but to run out of air, how long are you even down? And here's another thing, because it doesn't matter. I learned this from talking to Don, that it's not necessarily how long you're down, it's how deep you are. Mm-hmm. So give us a little bit of a, how measurement, what kind of a measurement that is when you're down there doing cleanup.
Yeah, if you're just breathing air, say you can breathe 100 liters of air in an hour. Because the air compresses at depth, you'll only have a half hour underwater with that same amount of air because it's compressed by the water. So you really have to keep an eye on your air consumption. I highly recommend you keep an eye on your gauges and so forth, but many times when I'm preparing for a cleanup, I'll be doing it without, help. And so sometimes it's easy to get, I guess, a little lackadaisical.
Got to pay attention. That's what it is.
Oh, my goodness.
You do got to pay attention. And if you were inexperienced, running out of air can be kind of a shocker. But,
yeah.
There's always a lot of air at the surface, so if you're not too deep, you shouldn't be able to make it up to the surface without a problem.
So again, we're talking with Don Fassbender here today, President, Great Lakes Scuba Diving and Lake Preservation. He's known as Diver Don. You've referenced a couple of times, Don, you've put videos and things up on various social media. You are pretty active there. How can people look into this so they can get an idea of what it is you're talking about?
We have a website, of course, GreatLakesScubaDivers.com. If folks want to reach me directly, they can email president@GreatLakesScubaDivers.com. We're always looking for ideas and places of concern where tires may have collected or trash is known to be. Some folks had let us know about some tires that were north of Lance in an old dock area that you couldn't even see from the surface. All the pilings, everything was under the surface, but there were tires there. So if you know of any kayakers or if you know of any areas where, trash can be found and needs to be removed, please email me. But we're also on Facebook. It's probably the most common area to find us. There's either Diver Don Scuba or Great Lakes Scuba Divers on Facebook. You'll be able to find us.
So do you have anything lined up here now in the next near future as we're in the summer season on Lake Superior?
We're going to be doing some searching around the portage, probably doing an organized cleanup if I can get enough man hours up there. The south entry, there's some tires. The local gentleman I mentioned earlier, Derek, and I had swung along that wall, and we found a pallet full of batteries, which is quite alarming to me. I don't know why there would be one. But that's going to require some special equipment and a lot of attention, some things that we probably don't possess yet. So while I'm at it, I'm going to plug our raffle ticket sales. We could sure use the income.
Yeah, because Don, tell us a little bit about this special equipment.
Yeah. Well, the lift bags are a good example. We have a number of them now. When I first started doing this cleanup, we didn't even have a compressor here in Marquette. I would go to the fire department and ask them to fill my tanks. Sometimes they could. During COVID, they decided they couldn't risk it. And so we started fundraising to get a compressor. And believe me, it's not a regular donut compressor you'll find at Walmart. These things are, really high pressure cylinders that we fill. So we've come a long way with some of the equipment that we have. We even have a boat now, and one pontoon with a crane on the front that we use to remove heavier objects, but also to put in buoys out at certain shipwrecks. Part of our mission is to preserve historic underwater sites. And so, there's a lot of equipment involved. Removing batteries, we need to fabricate some baskets or hooks because we don't want to, if there's acid in there, we don't want that leaking into the water column. So it's going to require a little bit of equipment that we don't have. And if there's a full pallet full, we're going to be working that area for a little while.
Don, you mentioned kayakers, and I'm not a diver. Don't even ask me. Now, when I'm thinking about what you're doing, and I think about the debris and losing, I can't imagine when that silt is released. Do you get vertigo? Is that feeling like, where's my up and where's my down, and which way am I going? Does that happen?
Early on, certainly. You get used to it. I can dive by braille, it seems, these days. Mm-hmm. But kayakers actually have come into play several different occasions. When I'm down by the Bums Beach there, one of our board members, Barbie DiPietro, she offered to come out with her kayak and just I could hand her bags of trash. And there was another young lady who helped us up in the Lance area when we were working by the old mill, which is just south of the Barriga Dock. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of tires there and things like this, and it's pretty shallow. So, they're able to take a rope, take a line, move things to the shore and do things like this. We don't always have to be, in fact, it's probably easier for a kayaker or someone with a boat or a jet ski to move things from where we're at to the shore than for us to swim them all the way over.
Yeah, and that kind of ties into the question that we had for you, is that for people that maybe are listening to this in the area, they want to help, or maybe there's similar efforts where they're listening, but they're not divers. You mentioned kayakers and stuff, but for people that are not divers, can they still help? And if so, how can they help you?
Oh, absolutely. Well, if you go to that Facebook page and take a look at some of the photos, you'll see in Marquette Lower Harbor, we had probably 30 or 40 people taking tires from the boats at the dock and running them up into the dumpster. There's all kinds of ways they can help us. They don't have to be a diver. They don't even have to be a kayaker. Even just someone with boots and gloves can really help us complete this mission of getting at the Great Lakes.
You mentioned like you had a raffle that you're operating too that helps raise funds. What about the fundraising? As you talk about getting the specialized equipment and somebody may want to help, what do you have for that option?
Well, as a nonprofit, we can, offer tax-free donations, or we can accept tax-free donations. And we do have the raffle. We also sometimes sell pasties from Lowry's Pasty Shop. There's different ways that we have been raising funds over the years. And so, but if you visit the Facebook page, you'll find our post about raffle tickets. We've got some pretty unique art that we're giving away as the main prize this year. The featured art piece that we're raffling off comes from a log that had been submerged in the Keweenaw Bay for about a century. It has the initials on it, on the end of it, Berga Lumber Company, BLC. And they haven't been floating logs down the lakes for years and years and years. So when this washed up on shore and the township wanted to get rid of it, a buddy of mine claimed it and sliced some cookies out of it. And now he's got an image of Lake Superior with a CNC machine he made out of metal, stamped on this piece of wood that had been submerged in the lake for 100 years, and we're raffling it off as the main prize.
The website and the Facebook page and such, again, what was that? Can you refresh us with that?
Sure. The website is greatlakesscubadivers.com, and the Facebook page is just facebook.com Diver Don Scuba or facebook.com Great Lakes Scuba Divers. And again, if someone wants to email me directly if they have some hot leads on things that need to be cleaned up, president@greatlakesscubadivers.com. That's my email.
Don Fassbender with us here today. He's the president of Great Lakes Scuba Diving and Lake Preservation, talking about some cleanup efforts, diving in the Big Lake and the Great Lakes. And Don, it's been a pleasure having you on. There's it sounds like there's always going to be something for you to dig up out of there, but that's good work that you guys and all the volunteers are doing. So, I mean, we say thank you.
Oh my gosh. And I want to be on that list because I'll gather up some kayaking gals of mine, friends of mine, and yep.
Well, if you're willing to help us, we'll definitely love to have you there.
All right.
You bet. You
Don,
bet.
thank you for your time today. It's been a pleasure having you on.
Okay, take care, guys.
It's Don Fassbender, who's president of Great Lakes Scuba Diving and Lake Preservation, and everybody knows him as Diver Don. And Frida, that just, the stories of it and where he's been and where he's been looking and where he finds stuff. There's always stuff. And it's true. It was for the longest time, especially on Lake Superior, we operated with an out of sight, out of mind sort of mentality. Dump it in the lake. Then we're left with this kind of thing. And look at what Don's doing.
Unbelievable. 14 tons of tires just from Marquette alone. And, listening to him describe what it's like to pull that stuff up. It's not like, you dive at the bottom of a pool and you bring back, somebody's floaty or whatever. This is serious work. And remembering how cold it is. And I mean, thank goodness the cold makes it clear so you can see all this stuff. It's not like you're, trying to navigate through some really murky, muddy waters. But I'm just overwhelmed at that Youper spirit.
Yeah, that UP driven sort of wanting to fix things, make it a little bit better. The big things for people to remember that are listening to this, maybe aren't familiar with what we're talking about. These are tires, car tires, motorcycle tires, tractor tires that have been used for bumpers along the piers and on the shorelines and on the boats. And for decades, these are tires, rubber tires that went into the bottom of the lake that are there for 60 years, 70 years, 100 years. As long as we've been having tires, they've been used for it. So they get into the silt and they get into the bottom and they fill with the silt and the sand, and you don't just get them out of there. But when he started talking about like a pallet of batteries being discovered in the portage in the Keweenaw waterway right off of Lake Superior in the South Entry, those are the kinds of things that this kind of effort needs help. Maybe if you've got it in your area, wherever you are, and you can help out with it, please do. But we want to thank Don Fassbender for joining us with this. Just some great info and a great mission.
I'm proud to know him.
Yeah, it's good
and his spirit. It's remarkable. And then to know that he has a group that will answer the call.
Yeah. Well, it's been great having Don Fassbender on today to talk about it. We call him Diver Don. Everybody knows him that way. And we appreciate his time. And that's going to do it for us here. But don't forget, if there's something that you would like to hear us talk about on the podcast, you can find us through the National Parks of Lake Superior Foundation. Let us know and say, hey, Frida and Walt, talk about this or look into this. We'd be happy to hear from you. But this time around, that's it for this edition of the Lake Superior podcast. I'm Walt Lindala.
I'm Frida Waara. Thanks for listening. The National Parks of Lake Superior Foundation, NPLSF, is the only official nonprofit 501c3 fundraising partner of the National Park Service for all 5 U.S. National Park sites on Lake Superior.
To learn more about NPLSF projects and programs, you can visit the website at nplsf.org or friend them on Facebook.
I'm Frida Waara.
And I'm Walt Lindala. Thanks for listening to the Lake Superior podcast.
This podcast made possible with the support of the National Parks of Lake Superior Foundation and Media Brew Communications.
This episode brought to you by Cafe Imports, Minneapolis-based importers of fine specialty green coffees. Independently owned and operated since 1993, Cafe Imports has been dedicated to decreasing its impact on the earth through renewable energy, carbon neutrality, and by supporting conservational efforts in places where quality coffee is grown and also where quality coffee is consumed. Where does your coffee come from?
And by the National Parks of Lake Superior Foundation. As a nonprofit, we rely on support from listeners like you. If you like what you hear, please consider a donation. To learn more and make a gift, visit us at www.gosuperior.org.